Lil Baby.
Welcome to Conversations with Chai. I'm your host, Ram Chaudhary, aka Lil Baby Ram Ram. Today I have with me CEO and founder Tazin Khan.
Hi.
Yo, appreciate you doing this, family.
Thank you so much for having me.
No, thank you. This is one of those that I I always have the pause that I knew at some point were going to happen, and this is definitely on the list for me.
Thank you. Thank you for your patience with my scheduling.
No, of course, family. And we have so much to get into, but let's start there because we did reschedule, and you were telling me, and this is something that I thought was so interesting, but I would love to hear it from your thing because I'm going to butcher it.
Yeah, no, it's fine. We rescheduled because I got my period. And I don't do shit when I get my period. I'm very keen on feminine design principles, which is aligning the way that you work to your hormonal cycle. And when I did that, my life changed.
So feminine design principle, and you said that your company is almost structured that way.
Yeah, we are an internal team of small, 4 but mighty people, and we work with a group of 50 volunteers across all over the world, which happen to, I think, 99% be women on the team. And I learned this concept from a book that I read by I don't know if she's a professor, but she's a PhD, Jennifer Armbrust. And one book is called Design for a Feminine Economy. And the other one is called the Business Birthing Handbook. So it basically compares creating a business to giving birth for women. And it was one of the most fascinating reads in the world. And it just talked about the woman's body and how much wisdom and science and power is in aligning your life just in general, and then also the work that you do to your hormonal cycle. And the infrastructure that we have in place today is made for fucking men.
You talked about that. You said the workday setup. The workday setup, the 40-hour work week. I mean, you think about history, the Industrial Revolution, why all of this happened. It is not... we should update it just at large, I think, but that's a whole other podcast conversation to get into. But and the weed's kicking in a little bit. So. I'm like, ooh. I came in prepped and then I converted. I was it didn't take that much convincing, but
it doesn't take a lot of convincing with me at all. Anyway, yay for gardening.
I love that.
We're gardened here. Anyway, cool. You will be editing this, right? So my little anyways and shit like that.
No, we keep it. No, but that's fine. I was so excited. I figured based off of your vibe, I was like, she's probably gonna be cool as fuck. Right? And then I was like, oh, she's cool as fuck.
Yeah, ditto. Okay, so back to what I was saying. Project management systems and the way that we work, they're all 1 week sprints, running agile, all of the different tools to be able to be as efficient as humanly possible is designed by men for men. And men have a 24-hour hormonal cycle. So even fitness and all this shit about wake up at 5 a.m., take a cold shower, ice bath. Yes, that works for a lot of women too, to each his own, just in general. But if you are looking to align with intuitive cycles, you're going to be able to optimize the work that you do so much more, and your performance is going to be better.
Is there a specific setup that would be catered towards women?
Yeah. So, and I guess people that experience periods or folks that have a uterus, maybe, would apply to them as well. So on your 29-day cycle, you have multiple phases. You have your luteal phase, and your cycle starts the day that you get your period. You get your period, and during that time is the time to be as organized and kind of inward as possible. This is the time for release and, working through and finishing projects and whatnot. Obviously, you're releasing during that time. Then you step into your follicular phase. That's the phase where people are feeling it's the best week. It's women get one good week, and that's the best good week that you get. I can tell
my girl really love me.
Literally, yeah. And then you step into ovulation, and this is the time where you pitch. Okay? This is the time where you take all of your meetings. This is where you want to be as social as humanly possible, because ovulation is, from a very primitive perspective, it's mating season, baby. Like you're going to be glowing, smelling better. The things that the body does to prepare us for shit, like, is actually fascinating and marvelous. And there's so much there. But we're so distracted by screens anyway. Yeah, that's another podcast. Yeah. But the ovulation time is when you want to pitch, and then you're back at luteal, right? So, and the luteal phase is when you're preparing to get your cycle. This is when you want to be mindful of the meetings you take, because your hormones are in a place where you might not want to work on any very sensitive projects that might be emotional, or you're working through, like, or have meetings about shit that might be bothering you. And to different people, again, this is what works for me, because I know you keyboard warriors love to come in the comments and say, like, well, that doesn't apply to everyone. No shit.
Yeah.
I just like, and I'm going to be very gully during this podcast as well. Yeah. Okay.
No, of course. Like, you're telling me you're telling me, like, I get texts like bi-weekly from some OG or the other that's just like, yo, fam, I need you to turn it down like at least 2 notches, right? Like, that text, like, I know is coming, and I know who's going to send it. Yeah, I remember the funniest thing was, like, Connie just slid up and did like a crying emoji under, like, one of them, just sad crying. He's just like, bro, like,
yeah, totally. He's gonna do that to me too, for sure.
No, yeah, he always. It's just like, yo, bro, come on, like,
yeah.
So like, I think that's really dope, and like I think that you are a badass, right? Like, you are. I know, like, we were talking about just like professionalism, like, you're a badass, right? Like, the fact that, like, you set up a company and then you also, like, aligned it to your principles. Because when we talk about, like, ethos of businesses, it does start at the founder level, right? Yeah. And it's like, hey, this is the ethos of the company that I'm building, right? And it may not look, everyone thinks that they have like the catch-all solution for everybody's else's business. But it's like, yo, this is my business, and this is how you structured it.
Yeah. Thank
and
you.
And like, honestly, Cyber Collective, for like what the mission is, and you said how many volunteers at this point?
We have 50, and we're opening it back up to invite more pretty soon. So
insane.
Thank you.
Right, and the work is so, I think, especially, obviously, it's important as a whole, like cybersecurity and just like technical literacy is so important. Yeah. But I think for our community that lags behind. Like, I used to, like, it's so normal for a brown uncle to not know how to use a computer.
Yeah,
right?
I think that's socioeconomic, though. Because when we say our community, Cisco was full of fucking Indian dudes at the top, right? Like, I think a lot of times we put emphasis on representation from a cultural perspective, and there isn't as much nuance around the socioeconomic elements, because I have met very, 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 very successful and smart and intelligent brown people, but yes, the community, my microcosm of Bengali people, and that's what, the more Anik Bhaiya said this, my brother, which some folks listening know, Anik Khan, he told me this a long time ago, and he said, the older I get, the more I realize I don't know shit. And that has stuck with me since the day he ever said it. And the older I get, the more I realize how small we are in this universe and how many stories exist. And I am doing my best to leave generalizing behind me. I think there's a time and place for generalizations. I also think that at times it's a cop-out from like non-fucking colored people, the Anglos that don't understand our culture, just like bunching us all together. Like, think about Asian American Pacific Month, you know, AAPPI, is that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Bro, Asian? How many languages, cultures, nuance is spoken?
I think that's like the funniest thing, because you see that in corporate America so much, like all these like affinity groups, right? Where it's like, yeah, we're just going to give you one affinity group, right? Exactly. Like, I remember I sat on the Amazon's Asian app board, and I was like,
also fire. Wow. Okay.
I was like, what am I like?
Board member?
No. I had a lot of affinity group Asians out in New York. No, it didn't hit my pay at all. No, but it was like, it was cool. It was like, y'all think that this small budget, that you're allocating a budget to this, right? You're allocating a budget to this affinity group.
How do you
programming, right?
That
if you're the board and the board is so vast, you're thinking like, yeah, we want to make it fair. But inside this like small affinity group, there's so many cultures that we need to honor for us to do it appropriately.
100%.
And the reality is that's not how it's going to happen, right? Yeah. It's like, whoever the majority is probably just going to allocate most of the funding towards whatever their event is, right? Or whatever their heritage is. Completely understandable. But it's like from the top level, it's like, yeah, we're just going to throw y'all in this bucket. So we hit the DEI bucket.
Yeah. And we also like naturally do that too, because there is so much commonality, because we have been grouped. Like it has been us against them for so long. And I think we're coming to a place where, alhamdulillah, there is way more visible stories that represent so many backgrounds within our diaspora, which I think is really dope. But going back to your question of, in general, yes, security, literacy around your online safety is, I think, one of the most pertinent things that is very unsexy that people don't necessarily put emphasis on for creators, small businesses, because what camera should I look into to say this?
This one.
The middle one or this one? Okay. If you use the internet, you have to care about cybersecurity. And it's so simple. And I'm going to say it again. If you are connected to the internet, you have to care about cybersecurity. And it doesn't matter if you're like, it's complicated, I don't get it. There are resources now that help my Cyber Collective and many. But we have to start caring about it. And it's not people's fault that they don't understand it. It's also because it is an extremely there is a culture of elitism around it as well. It's very aligned to politics and policy, etc. Global conflict, war. And so it's not the people's fault that they don't understand it. But yeah, hella important, and it is my life's mission.
No, that's absolutely fire. So in your experience, if somebody's listening, what is the biggest cybersecurity gap that you see or mistake that you see in small businesses and in creators? This is a selfish question. I just gotta know who has my data and what they about to do with it.
Yeah, I think that you asked a really large question, because we're talking about big. And I'm a big nuance bitch. I use that word a lot because I think that it is one of the most important things. But for creators and small businesses, if we're talking about the largest gap, I would say the gap is the curiosity. Honestly, the curiosity of how all of these things and these tools that we're using, how does it work? How is it that my data is being stored limitlessly, and where is it going? What the fuck is really the cloud?
What do you mean by that? When you say for example, passwords saving, I used to be so against it, and now I just do it because it's so convenient.
Exactly. And that's another thing,
is the text
again we are you covered another thing, right? We can talk about just digital culture, which is how society and the concept of studying the way society has changed based off of technology's impact on us. So you talking about passwords and storing them, that security, but there's also a culture of convenience through technology that we've built, right? Everything's updated on our behalf. We don't have to think about anything, and it's automated, and that's the value of technology. But I think the gap and that's one thing, is the lack of curiosity or the lack of places to go to find answers that is in simple language, because it didn't exist for a long time. The other thing for creators, I think also, is the assumption that the mediums that they use and the different, and it's generational, not just creators, but that nothing's gonna go wrong. Or the thing that small businesses, creators, are just people in general, and it's the same philosophies and concepts and things that are in real life. We think we're invincible. We think we're not gonna fucking die, right? That's why people just make decisions the way that they do. And we think that bad things aren't gonna happen to me on the internet, or it'll happen to somebody else, or maybe it did happen to somebody else. But you probably will get hacked one day.
And what are you going to do if you have a social media page and you run your businesses, your brand is there, your important DMs, you're running all your comms through there, and you no longer have access to that? And then what do you do if you never get access back? And then what do you do if you lose all of the money that's in your bank account? Because once they got access to your Instagram, they went through your DMs and you sent a team member your credit card information because they were somewhere and they needed it for ordering something. There are so many different risk scenarios that I can put together, but I think it is just the assumption that it's not going to be me. That is changing a lot. But that is the biggest threat to creators and small businesses.
From a general person's perspective, right? Because you mentioned like the convenience factor of technology, right? And we honestly, a lot of the times, I know that I probably shouldn't be DMing like my producer my credit card info, right? But
oh my God, do you do that?
Should I not be? Because
no.
Because my next question to you was going to be like, how much should I just trust the encryption and security of these existing platform services that I'm using on the day-to-day?
Yeah, great question. Social media is not going to be the tool to let me put it. How much should you trust? You can trust, but also you should always be skeptical and you should always be very realistic. And that's why we call it Internet Street Smarts, like the program that we just came out with, and a course that we built at Cyber Collective, which is very beginner general information that I highly recommend everybody take. It's a 100% free course. Mm-hmm. And we come in from a very holistic perspective where we connect these big galactic problems like privacy, security, and tech ethics, right? Which are 3 different industries, 3 different kinds of jobs that have other hundreds of jobs and categories, like very big, large verticals. And so we talk about it in this holistic perspective. And even talking to you, I'm hearing all of the holistic questions. And so if there's anybody in the security and privacy industry watching this, I fucking told you so.
Because these are real.
These are real. And
these are real concerns.
Real concerns. And also the way that people are thinking about these concerns, they're not thinking about it well, this is a privacy problem and this is a security problem and it's a tech problem.
Again, you came from a corporate background. I came from a corporate background. Small businesses don't have entire teams dedicated to its security. Whereas, Amazon, anything got transmitted anywhere, it goes through multiple checks and balances and levels and protection. Banks
do the same.
But we, as small businesses and creators, it's me dolo. I don't got a tech person on my team managing when I am sending payment to a random contractor through this random thing that I've never used.
Oh my God.
Is that valid?
Bro, Jack Dorsey got hacked. Come on. And the other piece of it is there are not enough stories being shared of what's happened to people. And I'm this is sitting here talking with you is so validating right now. And I'm very, very thankful to be here. But what you said about sending the password via DMs or sending credit card information. There is no shame for having done it, right? Mm-hmm. You didn't know better. It was the most convenient path and you're focused on revenue and closing and doing what you need to do, right? So that's understandable. However, think about it this way. I would just try to compare social media as an open courtyard where you're constantly meeting people and there are different doors that you can go through, or think about it. Did you ever play Sims? Mm-hmm. A Sims environment, right? Think about it that way. And it's are you, or even at home, you're at home, are you going to let anybody that knocks on your door and they're looking for all of your most personal information and know the most personal details about you? Are you going to let the Jehovah's Witness dude come into your crib and learn everything about you? Probably not. Right?
I think that's the fallacy that we get into with social media. Because as you're saying that, I'm thinking remember the massive online multiplayer games? You wouldn't give your credit card info on that, right? Because that's absolutely insane.
Yeah.
But we do that all the time because we're there's real people at.
And also it's because you trust the person on the other end. And what social media has done is create this it creates these illusions and also just real life, you're interacting with a trusted individual, and you are on using a secure platform where you have to put in a password. There's, you might have multi-factor authentication or not, and you have trust in technology. And so you're using the technology as a vehicle, as it has positioned itself to fucking be, to do that. And it would behoove these social media platforms to actually act that way and have more encrypted messaging on their tools. I literally wrote on the train on the way here. I'm thinking about different thesis topics. I'm in my master's right now. And one of them is positioning social media as critical infrastructure, because social media is no longer just a tool for marketing. You use it as a way to sign on to like Airbnb. Like people use Facebook to sign into shit for single sign on all the time. People use Facebook for business, for work, right? Like it's not just a platform where you're socializing anymore. It's so much more than that.
I think that business element is like very like resonates very deeply with me, because I think about it, I'm like, yo, like I know like Gary Vee and all these guys say it's like, yo, if Instagram went down tomorrow, like what are you gonna do with your business, right? But that's real. Like when people talk about like, yo, TikTok going away, like you know how many people making real money?
Yeah,
like
on
you're
TikTok.
taking that entire economy away. It would have a real impact on like the finances of like the US, because that's a lot of money. Will those advertising dollars go to different places? Yeah. But in the short term, there's a bunch of creators that are just going to be out of a job.
Yeah. And so think about it. TikTok is being banned potentially. And that's a decision that the government is making on our behalf. We haven't really covered, and people don't think about the fact that there are 5 basically fiber optic cables under the sea, under the ocean, that runs all of our fucking internet, that are unguarded, that are just open. And there are these like implied assumptions that...
Wait, what does this mean? Like there's physical
cables in the water.
Okay.
That controls our internet. And if somebody decided to go cut that shit, like if Russia, China, or another nation state, or we did, we're clipped.
Like internet just go down.
Clipped. There are lots of backups. Generator is not the right word for that, because we're talking about the internet and not electricity, obviously. But there's
like fail safes
and different measures, obviously, that are in place. But yes, that is like, and so that's considered critical infrastructure, right? Like there are, I think, like 17 different categories under critical infrastructure. And I think social media should be considered one, because there's that. But in general, creators, like people, I just say this all the time, like cashless fucking businesses, bro. Anytime I go get a coffee in fucking Brooklyn and they're like, we don't take cash, I'm like, what are you gonna do if you just lose power? Like,
yeah.
What are we talking about right now?
Yeah.
And I think we were really trained on having so much trust in technology, and I'm seeing how much distrust there's that's been built in the past couple of years. And now it's more important than ever for people to become like aware and curious and learning.
No, and I kind of hear it based off of our conversation, but you definitely have a high bar for like what social media is to our society, right?
Yeah.
I think sometimes like we can sometimes minimize it, sometimes maximize it, right? But I think you have like a healthy understanding of like what it really is, right? Because I think sometimes it's easy for our generation to maybe like right off be like, oh, like social media is like played out, right?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, there's a lot of businesses that rely on that for their industry, right?
Yeah.
Do you have like specific like policy sides of the policy that you like land on when it comes to social media? Because we are talking about it is critical infrastructure. So every decision that any of their CEOs or anything make, it has reverberating effects.
Yeah.
Like I just saw your clip when you talked about Zuck basically talking about how, hey, they're going to change their content policy.
Yeah.
Content policy moderation, right?
Yeah.
And you brought up, I thought, a very insightful point where I think when people see those clips, like headline clips, you immediately go towards lack of nuance. Oh, it means like people can say
no
like,
one's watching the whole thing.
Yeah, it means like people can say like dickhead things to me on the internet. Yeah, but it's like more than that, right? Where did you kind of think about like that decision from Meta?
Yeah, I can speak on it at a very high level. I have it tagged to read more about and read the actual policy changes, the before and after. But essentially, they made changes to their content moderation policies, and they removed third-party fact checkers. My takeaway from the video when I watched the entire thing, I did garden before I watched it, so this might not be full quote, so definitely correct me or go look at it yourself. But he was talking about the fact that algorithms and the automations that they set for these policies were getting things wrong, right? 100% agree on the fact that algorithms should not be the sole method of moderating content. And what people also don't understand is there is an entire underbelly of the internet that none of us see. Okay, there is so much shit like child pornography, beheadings, like crazy fucking shit on the internet that exists that we don't have visibility into because of content moderation, because of the systems that we have in place on the internet. If you want to find them, you can. But it's like, why is it that these images aren't just popping up on Instagram when I'm on there or something like that? Or even if you're on a Pornhub, which is a documentary I highly recommend anyone interested in like the data economy watches, because it doesn't have to do with porn. It has to do with fucking data, which is insane. But he was talking about the automations that are in place that are wrongfully checking things. Another thing with like shadow banning, for example, this is a term that I know a lot of creators are familiar with. Like, do accounts get shadow banned? Yes. Also, sometimes accounts get shadow banned from a technical perspective because of something called rate throttling. The system, let's call it a bot. It's not a bot. It could be a bot, not a bot. But let's say you're posting a lot. Let's say you went fucking viral and you're reposting constantly, you're sending mad DMs, and your activity on Instagram is unlike your normal activity. It went from being, you're on it 4 hours and they have all of this information on you, how long you hover over pictures, how fast you type, what type of language you're using, how long you're on Instagram, when are you likely to open up the account again. They have this and all of this metadata on you already. So then when you do something that is not matching your unique identifiers or your unique behavior identifiers on the platform itself, it might think like, okay, is this a bot? Because Instagram is checking for that. And now with the FTC's new AI regulations, and the fines are wild, there's more to come of trying to identify what's AI, what's bots when creators or people are using social media. But
when you said that the FTC has
I'll get to that. Okay. The rate throttling thing that I'm talking about. So what happens is there's too much information. Think about billions of pieces of fucking data, trillions going through servers. The servers are like, oh my God, I can't handle this. And it starts throttling essentially. And then it glitches and will stop your content from showing up. Okay. So way more technical. There are other ways to explain this. That's how I understand it to be. So that can also make it seem like you're shadow banned, but you're not. But it's just a system because of the automations. So what Zuckerberg is talking about is around some of that and some of just the fact that things are being flagged as bad content that's not. When like my shit has gotten flagged when I comment on somebody's picture and I'm like, let's fucking go, bitch. They're like, this is marked as inappropriate. Or
is that an automation?
That's an automation.
Okay.
So they're talking about lifting a lot of those automations from content moderation. Now, the thing that I haven't seen is what is their proposed solution? Like, how are they gonna, and that's what I need to read into. And there are lots of layers, and there is an entire trust and safety industry that are experts in this policy. I'm not an expert in this. I'm an aficionado in it. And it runs adjacently to the work that I do. But yeah, there was a lot of misunderstanding with his video, but also a lot of anger coming from appropriate places of lack of moderation and what it's going to mean for hate speech, et cetera, et cetera.
What do you personally land on that? I have like,
I'm freedom of speech.
I'm very like, the internet, like kind of, you describe social media as like this courtyard, right?
Yeah.
There's nothing stopping me outside of breaking the law of me going out in public and calling somebody an asshole.
Yeah.
Right? Like I shouldn't be banned from going to the courtyard because I'm doing that. Now, if I'm starting to like fight people in the courtyard, you got to do something with me, right?
Yeah.
But I think a lot of the social media moderation has gone very, very extreme in the sense of like, I think you brought this up maybe in your clip too, right? Where people were talking about just like Palestine, right? And that it's like, okay, who's making that decision that you can't talk about that? Or who's making that decision that that content shouldn't be displayed somewhere?
Yeah, and there's a lot of politics behind a lot of that. And then the thing about the nuance is that a lot of the things that we see on the internet and the downstream impact of shit, right? Like someone makes a decision and how does that impact the fucking global economy or people or whatever. There are so many different things that go into that, but also I forgot the train of thought kind of, but what I'm trying to say is the changes that Meta is making, yes, is one angle of it potentially the fact that we have a new administration coming in and Trump and Elon and all of the tech powers that be are doing evil shit. Is that a part of it? Sure. I don't fucking doubt that. Is that all of it? No. Is there also another part of it where ethics teams had something to do with talking about this and it was the best solution because certain elements were being moderated, shadow banned or something like that? Sure, I'm sure that was a piece of it. The point is that there are many fucking pieces of Tetris at play that needs to be considered to make decisions. Think about this. This one fucking tool is making decisions that has to consider and people accept their thoughts, views, and everything to be considered in the decision because you have a personal parasocial relationship with Instagram. But Instagram has to make decisions on behalf of billions of us.
Businesses,
share all of this shit. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying that when you see certain fucking headlines online that are talking about these topics, and that was what my video was about, just be so fucking for real with yourself.
I think it's like
that's really what it is.
I think what you said before that, Ani said, like, I think people think that they know way too much than they actually do. I think people's like intelligence levels like are much less than they probably are giving themselves credit for, right? You're probably not looking at the whole picture, right? Because you're talking about teams and teams of people that are looking at a specific decision. And you think because you have access to comment that like you have more knowledge and information than everybody else that's working on this every day. It's like disrespectful.
Yeah.
It's disrespectful.
Literally.
Like,
and that's why I even hate the word expert. Like I do not call myself a cybersecurity expert. I don't call myself an expert. Like the only thing I'm expert at is fucking knowing there will be change and being a student, like learning every single day. That is my only expertise, and being a bad bitch. Just kidding. But that's a huge part of it too. And the other thing you were talking about, you shared your story of like going in the courtroom, calling somebody an asshole. You're coming from your perspective. Think about billions of people having this same story that you have of like, well, if I go in the courtyard and call somebody an asshole, like that shit will start a war actually if you think about it that way. What's going to happen if billions of people are calling each other assholes, right? That is also what's happening on the internet right now. And that's a part of the problem with the content moderation. Like without what automations will they use? How will there be content moderation? How will people feel safe and confident in their experiences online? And it's so complex, bro.
You brought up AI.
Oh yeah.
And that obviously it's like a triggering word for me because I'm a full doomsdayist. And that was like the top thing that I wanted to ask you, right?
Yeah.
Like, are we clipped because of AI? And
if you're a person that looks at life as like you're gonna get clipped, then you're gonna get clipped. If you're a fucking warrior, you're not getting clipped.
Do you think
like I think it depends on the person.
Do you think that the impacts of AI in like, let's say the next 5 years, do you look at it as a net positive or net negative?
again, very large question that can apply. Like, there is no human possible way, I think personally, to answer that question intelligently to guide people that might be watching this, because that's such a generalization against so many risk factors. And as a cybersecurity specialist, I'm a risk assessor. My job is to think about every possible avenue of something going fucking wrong. And then how do we prepare for that? That's essentially what cybersecurity is, but on the internet. If we're thinking about AI for creators, let's be specific there. Like, is it a net positive for creators? I think yes, if you use it properly, right? And if you are also holding certain social media platforms and companies accountable. So creators saw the AI. Did you see that Instagram had released those like AI generated creators, and they were basically doing digital blackface? And people went fucking off about that. And guess what? They removed it. And that's the power of collective voice as well, and the power of knowing this is wrong. So I think that I'm a tech optimist at times, and I think that if we want it to be positive, we can. It can be a net positive in how we use it. But then you got to think about the environmental impact of AI. You have to think about the bad data that already exists that's training this AI, the bias. You have to think about deepfake technology, deepfake porn, cyberbullying, sextortion, cyber warfare, fucking like. Then I go into, when I really think about it, I go into, we're clipped, right? Like that. But it all depends on the scope, and it also depends on the day that I think you ask somebody that's in the space if it's a net positive or net negative.
And I think I go back and forth on that like a lot, right? Like Neville has like a very positive outlook where he's like, listen, imagine a utopic society where like AI has like minimized the cost of everything so low that everybody can just like create and be pleasurable, right? But then I also think about, okay, like cybersecurity is at the highest of levels, right? Is military security, right? And it's like, yo, like they go back and forth on that.
Yeah.
So then it comes down to like who, because then it becomes a real arms race. Like who has the best?
It already is.
Who has the best AI? Who has the best tech?
I was in a cyber ethics class last semester. I'm getting my degree at NYU, and I graduate this spring, which I'm so excited.
Hey.
I'm getting my degree in global security, cyber crime, and conflict. So it is the geopolitical and cyber war aspect of cybersecurity. So my classes last semester were intelligence and counterintelligence. I had a espionage and economic warfare class, and the last one was cyber ethics. And in these classes, we're talking about like space warfare. Like really let that sit in for a second. We are talking about cyberspace warfare. We are so even beyond what people actually are privy to from a tech perspective and how it's being leveraged within certain domains. Because AI has been around for like over 20 years. We've been using parts of AI for a really long time, right? Artificial intelligence is not new. I think visibility and access to artificial intelligence at this scale is. But the net positive and net negative, many things can and always will exist at once. So it can be a net positive in the fact that it helped breast cancer research, and AI was leveraged to come up with a formula in an efficient way that solved a certain medical or health problem. Simultaneously, that same data can also be leveraged to harm Black women in hospitals. And I think a large part of net positive or net negative is the fact that we are building systems of efficiency on top of systems that are not broken, because people keep saying they're broken systems. They're actually working exactly the way that they were set up, which was to exploit and take advantage of marginalized communities. So these systems are working exactly the way that they're set up. So the net negative in general is just that society Western society is set up to shit on people. So like it sits on capitalism, it sits on racism, it sits on sexism. So what AI has the opportunity to do is maximize that on scales fucking unfathomable.
What drives, and I know this is probably another very general question, right? But what drives the direction that we go when it comes to that, right? Like obviously like you have like Elon lobbying for like, like OpenAI is like left leaning or whatever the case on both sides of it, right? But is it a team of people? Like what is the governance of that and the development of that like looking like behind the scenes?
It should be and can be all of us. But as far as participation, behind the scenes, so AI is obviously a technical term. It's artificial intelligence. Now, there are things that we have to think about of what's the entire ecosystem of AI. At the center of everything, what we're all talking about is the fucking data ecosystem. Data sits in the middle, and then there's all of these things that are connected to that data. And AI takes that data and then shoots shit out. And so there are many people at work that are there are good guys that are working at every point of the supply chain of AI. And policymakers kind of come at the end ish, or like close to the end. If we're looking at like a 0 to 10 scale, policymakers probably sit at like a 7 or something like that. And there's still a lot of, I think that the example that I would give is that there was an executive order and brief from the White House about AI that Biden released that now might be changed by the Trump administration. But we're talking about AI and regulating AI. We don't even have a federal privacy regulation.
What do you mean by that?
There's no federal privacy protections for Americans. Everything is state by state. So recently, it was just released that Delaware, Iowa, New Hampshire, and New Jersey have new privacy laws. So protections as a consumer, if you have a right to access, delete, and opt out of your data being reused and sold and shared it to other places. And these are new fucking laws that are coming up, right? And it allows you to have protections of your data and to opt out of things. And there are, in certain states, also the opportunity to opt out your data being used to train AI. And that is also a part of this regulation or these laws. But they exist state by state and not federally.
How does that even, I'm trying to understand, if it's state by state, right? How is that not impacting like what the company that's operating in that state has to do or is it?
It is. It is.
So they're changing it state by state?
They're changing it
on the private side?
On the private side, and companies that don't adhere to this will be fined. Like the FTC, the question you were asking earlier about the AI fines. If companies are using AI to create fake reviews, if you are a consumer product goods company and you're selling a product and you use bots or AI to hype up reviews and they're fake, you can get fined up to $42,000 per review. Per violation.
So if it's hey,
but that's not a privacy law. That's different. So all of this, everything that happens on the internet and even security, people think it's very technical. It's a compliance and policy based industry. So there are rules, shit you got to follow. You got to make sure X is secure. You have to make sure you have your employees are aware. You have to have certain tools implemented, X, Y, Z, and there's compliance and things that you have to follow depending on the industry you're in. Financial, insurance, banks, they have perhaps stricter policy that they follow than other verticals do. Or even threshold of income or revenue, how much money people are making. So then if you don't, there are checks and balances. You have to be, there are like SOC 2 compliance, NIST compliance. There's compliance that the government created that companies have to follow and they have to adhere to. So an example of privacy regulation like GDPR is in Europe, is in the EU. So companies must make sure that they are securely keeping public information, that they are not releasing anything called PII, personal identifiable information of people, and they know where all of the data exists. There are lots of little pinpoints of what you have to maintain. Companies have to maintain this shit. These now new states, they have to implement these policies into their orgs. And we as a people have a right to go in and, let's say you sign up for an email list, or you get a coupon from a fucking J. Crew or a company or something like that, and you can opt out from getting emails, and then you go into the little fine print and you find request my data, right? But there's something called dark patterns that people use, and the FTC is coming down on dark patterns as well, where they purposely create methods so that you can't access the unsubscribe button. You ever try to unsubscribe from some shit?
It's impossible.
And then you can't find it, or they make it hella light gray so that you can't see it. Those are dark patterns.
That is coming down though, right? I think I just saw where it's like certain sites are going to have to do one click on subscriptions, right?
Those are all based off of the policy that's coming out. And so now that I think about it, policy is not at 7. I think it might be at a 5, 4 or 5. But there's also friction between technologists and people and policymakers, because policymakers are not implementing it, and they might make policy that's really rigid. But then when I was working at companies, if you are a law firm and you have so much sensitive data from people, right? You had none of these policies in place, and then all of a sudden, consumers have a right to request their data. You have to find every piece of data, which is, where does it all exist? There are not automations and tools to find that. For many companies, it's a manual fucking process to be able to find all of that information. You have to do it in less than 30 days, and then you have to organize it, and then you have to delete the data. And it's a lengthy lift for companies as well, which is what a lot of these companies push back on. And also, people will rather take the fine. It's like when Nike with the Jordans, they'd rather take the fine. Did you watch that?
Yeah. You pay the fine for Michael Jordan to wear the shoes, knowing that you're going to make more money in the long term than.
So a lot of these really expensive companies are doing that, but unfortunately, small businesses can't.
And I think so. What is like for even like somebody like me, right? Small business creator, right? Like obviously, I should be like, my entire business is the internet.
Yeah,
that's what I do. Right.
Yeah.
So in that case, like, what is it that, hey, my literacy on that end has to just up?
Yeah,
it does, right?
Do you want to secure your bag?
Of course.
Secure your fucking bag. Use multi-factor authentication. Make sure nobody can hack your shit. Make sure that that's one end. And, it's tough because I don't believe it's the responsibility of the consumers to be aware of everything. I do believe it's the responsibility of the government to share that information. There are a lot of resources, though, that the government puts out that people just don't read.
Yeah.
But now with AI, I think a thing that people can start doing just to be conscious, because there are habits that you can implement, then there are necessities that you have to for running a business or something, right? So we just talked about a lot of privacy. There's security and privacy. From a security perspective, there's very input-output shit that you can do. Have a password manager. Don't do important shit on public Wi-Fi. Try to match the vehicle to the thing that you're doing. So for example, don't send credit card information on a social media app. Credit card, social media doesn't always match up, but you're buying shit. So I understand why you would feel safe, but don't send it in a DM, right? Use certain platforms to do that. So that's those are little security tips, and I can give more later. But then from a privacy perspective, what you're talking about is like what I mentioned with the laws, understanding what compliance you have to adhere to as a small business. So the SBA puts out, the Small Business Administration puts out information. Like there was a whole thing going around on social media about like the business taxes, that if you don't pay it, you're going to get like there's BOI or something, like there was some tax shit that was like going around. And luckily people are sharing this information on social media. So it's really awesome. We have this tool to gain that knowledge, but I would take it a bit further and like once a quarter, just sit down and look up and ask Google, what are the newest policies in privacy that small businesses have to stay up to date on, right? What are the biggest risks from a security perspective to my business right now? Set up a Google alert to learn about that. And that's more general to follow compliance and keep yourself, in regulation. And then lastly, the biggest thing in that daily habits that you can have is, again, not doing important things on public Wi-Fi, like sending invoices or bank transfers, things that you care about, because anybody can join public Wi-Fi. Now you're naked in that courtroom. Mm-hmm. Now your ass is out. And anyone can do whatever they want and take whatever they want, as opposed to, and that's where there are certain securities in place, but there are hackers that know how to get around all of that. And that's cybercrime. That's not institutional impact.
Yeah.
But you see it so much. It's like, it's hard to even cover.
Again, like what you said earlier, where it's like, like your job is really like looking at all the risks, right? And there is like, again, like life is just risks and rewards, right? Like that's all it comes down to, like a bunch of risks and a bunch of rewards, right? And I think like from a small business lens, like I think it really comes down to like the literacy for a small business, the literacy of the founder, right? In terms of like technical literacy. I'm so dumb that I was like, everybody just probably like Google driving like investor decks.
Yeah.
I just found out, I was like, somebody looked at me and they're like, wait, you're sending that shit via Google Drive? Put that shit on a doc send, email lock that shit. Like you want people to know all of your numbers?
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's a very good point. They were like, would you just post it?
Now that's a privacy thing that was brought up, not a security
thing.
You see the difference? Like, so that's you want to keep your intellectual property, your assets and information private. So that is now, and you're using a secure method to be able to keep something private, because then that's a permissions thing on Google of who might, and if somebody can hack into your Google account and your Gmail, obviously, right? So there are points of getting hacked in any way. But what your friend was mentioning was more so like, do you want everybody to see your shit? That's a privacy thing. Because if a hacker goes in there or something like that, they're going to look at the investor deck, but they're going to try to find your bank account information, depending on what they're trying to do. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
No, it's talking to you. I don't know if it makes me more comfortable that there's intelligent people like kind of like distributing this information, or makes me more worried about like, damn, like, I don't know shit.
So this is like, and this is not even to try to make like, look, I can only do so much, and you can only help people as much as they want to be helped. And that is something I've had to remind myself, especially like being a leader in the social impact space. But that's why we call it internet street smarts. Because the other thing to remember is that, one, you said, I'm dumb. You're not dumb. You're very smart. I can hear it. The questions that you ask, I mean, you already know it. And you were saying that hyperbolically just to like say it. But what we say matters. Words or spells.
Facts.
And the other thing too is that, but for real, like we're New Yorkers. We're street smart. We're dissy. We're street smart. Right? I don't know about desi men. I don't know about desi men, to be honest.
No. We just walk around like hitting walls until like we're like, okay, like let me not hit this wall. That's literally life.
Yeah, I don't know. But yes, we can assume that we all carry a certain amount of understanding and capacity and ability to learn and adapt. Right? And there are certain qualities when you're crossing the street. You look left and right. When you are in a car, you wear a seatbelt. There are things that are there. So the reality is we all have capacity to learn this information. And the problem has been that the industry has not taught it in a way that resonates. That's also coming from people that you want to listen to. Like I used to say this all the time, and this is going to sound fucked up, but like even when I started, when I was working for a company and we were trying to cast people for the interview or for different like film things. I'm like, there's a level and a degree where you are very conscious of the people that you bring on, and it matters. There's shit that matters that comes at play, right? And is somebody going to prefer to listen to me talk about cybersecurity or like a old white bald dude drinking a big gulp at like 7 a.m? Probably me. And also depending on the gift of gab and I say this often too, that all experts should not be teachers, you know? But anyway, we all have the capacity to learn and do these things. It just hasn't been packaged in a way that resonates. And so Internet Street Smarts is one, taking all of these topics and the things that we covered probably like 10 different industries that are all dedicated to the different aspects of what we talked about, right? But this is the way people are talking about it. And that's why, like, in the media and everything, people are hyper generalizing shit over and over again. Understandably so, because not everyone is meant to be an expert in these topics. So Internet Street Smarts covers these topics: security, privacy, tech ethics, holistically. It's a 30-minute course. We try to make it as short as possible to basically get people from like zero or like maybe a point of curiosity to 50 to 60% of the way there. And then pathways to go even further for assistance. It's for everyday people. It's written at a 5th grade reading level. When you go in there, there's also it's on YouTube. And so you take a baseline assessment, which is a few questions to ask you about like your confidence levels. Then we do a demographics survey that if you're taking it, please do take that survey, but it's optional of like what your background is, where you're from. We don't share any of that data, and it's all anonymized. And then you take the course. The course is available on our website, and it's also on YouTube. I was like, because you think about accessibility, like we were thinking about using like a Teachable or Coursera or something like that. It's like, are people going to sign on and make an account? And like, here are more avenues that would block people from getting this information. So we put it on our website, and it's on YouTube, and you can actually watch it with your family together, right? Like with people. And we break down the concepts, and we share a glossary with you too, where we tell you in each definition, there's a section of how to talk to elders about it in the definition. Then it says how to talk to kids, and then the definition, and then the social justice aspect of how this impacts Black and brown people differently than others, or lower socioeconomic background, marginalized people in general than others. And it's the first of its kind course to do that. And I'm not even trying to like, maybe it's not a flex or anything like that, but I saw a problem and it was necessary.
It's important for exactly what you said right before, right? Which is it matters who the information is coming from, right? Yeah. Like, again, can my dad just Google something? Absolutely. But is he going to probably ask me and my sister first?
Period.
Of course.
Yes.
Right? Because again, I'm going to give it to him in a way that's digestible for him.
Because you know him. And that's why when people ask me...
You're closer to that than any... like.
Yeah. And that's why when people ask me, and funders and everything, they're like, what's your target audience? I'm like, family's help desk. Who's the person that the family is calling for help with anything tech related?
Every fam has one.
Every fam has one. I want that person to take this course. And then I want that person, and I want to help that person facilitate helping their family members take the course. So we're actually launching a rapid response micro grant at the end of January. The applications will be open, where we are giving people that apply a sum of money to host watch parties to be able to make their friends and family become internet street smart. So I saw this done online during the elections, where people were like giving these small micro grants of like $500 here, $1,000 there, to like host people and get them to vote or register to vote. So we want you to host people, and you all can watch it together for 30 minutes. It's going to include a toolkit of like questions to ask, how to get people hype, how to have a not whack party, right? Like things you can order depending on the state that you're in or wherever you are. And the goal is to get people to take the course. And so you can apply to host the party. We'll give you exactly how to do it, soup to nuts. What is soup to nuts?
That's definitely a white person expression.
What the fuck
like, I know that it's an expression.
Married to a white man, this shit kills me anytime it really kills me. So pardon that. But anyway, we have this grant that we're releasing. So that I hope also encourages people to take the course. But in the course, there is also a security plan worksheet where we walk you through how to come up with a security plan for yourself and implement it, and how to revisit each month.
And there's a ton of shit that we're coming out with this year too that I'm so excited about. But I think that's a great place to start. Like, take the course and then give us feedback. And also, if there's more, or maybe you want to get to the next level now, we partnered with an organization called Tech Besties. The founder's on my board. Let's go, Darian. I love you. But they also create pathways now if you want to get into the industry, because we got you curious and now you're like, this is dope. I want to work in the field, because the field also makes mad bread. So that's also an aspect of it. But anyway, the resources exist and we're working on making more.
No, that's, I think we're wrapping up, but
okay.
I appreciate you doing this because of many reasons, but mostly because of what we're talking about. It really matters who the information is coming from, right? And I know you recognize that, right? We are going to drop all the resources below.
Yeah, I'll email them to you.
Yeah, absolutely. We wrap up every guest episode with a segment called Call Your Shot.
Oh,
something in the next year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. The idea being that you say it up here. When you go out, do the thing. I'm able to clip this up and send it to you, post it, do all the socials, but something, anything, personal, business, what have you, something that you will make happen.
I'm going to publish my book.
Incredible.
Yeah.
I love the book publishing ones because it's so like, I like see it and I'm just able to send it. I just sent it her, Isra hers like a couple months ago, right? I was like, she said it last year. She's like, yo, I'm going to get back into writing. I'm going to publish. She published 2 months ago.
Amazing.
I was able to clip that up, send it to her, and I'm all like, fam, look what happens in a year.
Alhamdulillah. Oh my God. Thank you so much for having me. You're an incredible interviewer. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank y'all for listening. Peace.